Cabinet Member for Housing and Regeneration. We also have present officers representing Liverpool City Council, Liverpool City Region, Mersey Travel. I will ask now the committee clerk, Gillian McCoy, to check that members of the committee present virtually can see and hear us.
Councillor Connor, can you confirm that you can see and hear, please?
Yes, thank you, Jill.
Councillor Hinnigan, can you confirm that you can see and hear, please?
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, all good.
Councillor Kushner, can you confirm that you can see and hear, please?
Yeah, Jill, I can, thanks.
Thank you, Jill. I'd like to just take this opportunity to remind members, officers and members of the public to leave your microphones on mute during the meeting until you want to comment. In addition, can officers also turn off their webcams unless they are addressing the committee. Once people have finished speaking, please ensure to mute your mic again so the audio remains clear. When I bring you in, please unmute your mic and say your name and allow a brief pause while we ensure you are visible on screen. Item number 1, declarations of interest. Can I invite members and officers present to declare any interest relating to the main agenda item? Jill, can I just ask you to check if anyone has their hand raised to declare an interest, please?
No, no hands are raised, Chair.
Thank you. Before I move on to item 2, as Chair, I want to make some comments to give some context to the item we are about to discuss. Consultation on Liverpool City Centre Connectivity Scheme started in 2016, of which Lime Street is a key component. This included a range of consultation events and the online survey inviting comments on the proposals. The most recent public consultation took place in January 2020. Additionally, opportunity has been provided throughout this time to all councillors to scrutinise or comment on the scheme at stakeholder events, a pre-council or member briefing session, select committee meeting, and at the cabinet meeting which took place on the 24th of January 2020. I would like to advise that item 2 relates to consider the objections received to the proposed traffic relation order PM 3589. The TRO proposal is to introduce a closure on Lime Street between Elliot Street and St John's Lane with an access restriction allowing only vehicles accessing the St John's Centre car park to pass through. During the 28-day objection period, 21 formal objections were received, with 14 objections made by councillors, 1 from an MP, 2 on behalf of businesses, with 1 already being withdrawn, and the remaining 4 from individual members of the public. The first committee on the TRO proposal was held on the 15th of December 2020. After considering representations made by Councillor Small, Banks, Woods, Councillor Haley and Roberts, the panel approved all elements of the TRO except the closure of Lime Street and made a request for further modelling to be carried out with options to be presented at a future committee. 5 options have been drafted and discussed at length at the committee held on the 15th of April 2021. However, the panel delayed the final decision to allow further information on the public transport strategy and the financial implications for each option. I will now move to item number 2, which is the Liverpool City Centre Connectivity Scheme, Lime Street Central Ward. Can I please refer members to pages 1 to 22 off their agenda and supplementary agenda. And I would like to invite officers who are going to propose the proposals, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's Fernando here from Highways and Transportation. Just hold on a second, can't see anyone now. Yeah, sorry. We've pulled together a short presentation on the wider connectivity phase 1 scheme because, as you know, Lime Street is part of the overall program, and we cannot see these schemes in isolation. So we've pulled together a brief presentation of the overall connectivity phase 1. So just wanted to ask whether you want us to go ahead with that presentation or just focus on the TRO about the Lime Street scheme.
Fernando, yeah, I think it's fine if you have a presentation that you want to present, and then obviously if you can talk us through the report too. Thank you.
Sure. All right, thank you. So let me see if you could see this screen.
Yeah, Fernando, we can see it.
All right, thank you. So I'll just commence with this map, really, that shows the scale of the connectivity, the city centre connectivity phase 1. So the schemes includes Brownlow Hill proposals, Moorfields, the City Bus Hub, Tythe Street, Victoria Street, Coach Park, the Strand, and Lime Street. So what we're actually trying to do is change how the people move around the city centre. So what we're trying to do is bring more efficiencies to the network, and by doing that, we release road space that then we are able to reallocate to pedestrians and cyclists whilst maintaining traffic flows across key routes. In terms of the schemes that we have already delivered, so the first one is Victoria Street. So this is a public ground scheme. We have enhanced the area for pedestrians and we still provide facilities for taxis. So whilst we couldn't implement cyclist security facilities here, that's because this road leads to the entrance to the tunnel, but we are providing cycling links across Tythe Street. So this scheme is already delivered, and basically we have improved the footpaths, we have improved the carriageway, so we have dealt with a lot of the complaints that we have received in the past, and the scheme has been designed in full compliance with inclusive standards. The next scheme that has been already delivered is Moorfields. So Moorfields is not just this road here is not just a maintenance scheme. This is the access to the commercial district. So if you come by train, this will change the welcoming area when you arrive there. But not only that, Moorfields sits between Daly Street and Tythe Street. By changing how the buses work around the city centre, the feeling of Daly Street will change massively, because in the past we used to have loads of buses laying over at that location. That's not going to be the case in the future. And in Tythe Street, that's where we are going to provide segregated cycle facilities. So in the end, we are promoting more connectivity between different transport models, including rail, pedestrians, and active travel. The other scheme that has already been delivered is the City Bus Hub. So as part of the Liverpool City Centre connectivity, there has been a lot of consultation and good working together with Mercy Travel and the Bus Alliance. So the rerouting strategy that has been already implemented has had some changes done following a year-long consultation by Mercy Travel, but the initial routing strategy that was assessed as part of the business case, it indicated a reduction of 2,000 tons of CO2 emissions and a reduction of 900,000 miles of kilometers. That's basically coming out of more efficiency bring to the buses. And the bus hub, the location of the bus hub has been identified by working together with the Bus Alliance. Brownlow Hill, which has already been delivered, this provides connectivity with the university quarter. So if you think about that, this road connects with Lime Street. We are improving Lime Street, we are improving St. John's Lane. So by doing all these interventions, we are providing good connectivity throughout the city centre. So this scheme, again, has already been delivered. The City Coach Park. So this is another of the interventions to to help with the congestion and the traffic issues that we have around the city centre. So rather than have coaches laying over in locations that they shouldn't really, we have increased the capacity of the coach park in Riverside Drive. Again, this scheme has already been delivered and is in place already. The Strand corridor, these works are ongoing in the Strand phase 1, which is north of James Street. And the main reason behind this scheme was that this road was dominated by traffic. If you see that picture, it actually looks like a motorway, really. We have high vehicular speeds. The reason behind that is that when you have peak times, traffic goes to a halt, really, because you have many junctions there that are just impacting traffic. But when there's no peak time, that actually feels like a motorway. So that promotes more high speed. So we're trying to address that as part of our scheme. And also, at the time of reviewing this business case, 24 months prior to that, we had 4 fatalities on this corridor. So do nothing wasn't an option. As you can see, this is a severance, major severance between the waterfront and the city centre. So the proposal for the Strand is actually a reduction in the number of lanes, but this is not basically just reduction of lanes per se. What we're trying to do is improve the efficiencies on this network. So if you think about that, for example, on the Pierhead, we used to have 3 access roads. You don't need 3 access roads if you look into the data and the facts that we have there. So just 1 road is more than enough. So by closing 2 of them and then just maintaining one access, that improves the through traffic along the Strand because we have less junctions there. And by doing all of that, what we do is we improve efficiencies. But then rather than keeping that for traffic, what we do is we reduce the road space allocated to traffic and we reallocate that to cyclists and pedestrians. So as part of the Strand scheme, we are widening the footpaths. We are promoting active travel by including segregated cycle facilities. And in the end, this scheme will improve air quality and promote active travel. We are implementing a significant greening of the corridor with 120 trees being planted. So I have some more visuals of these proposals. I have to apologize because these are not the latest ones, because since we pulled together these CGIs, we actually did more improvements to the cycle facilities. And basically now we have tried to remove as much as possible of shared surfaces, and we have implemented segregated crossings as well. So when you have to cross the road, basically cyclists could cross segregated from pedestrians. So this is a photo this is the existing condition now in St. Nicholas Place. So again, you can see that there's a lot of wasted space allocated to traffic. And this is the proposal. We still cater for the traffic movements, but as you can see, we are creating a really nice public space with a lot of greenery and benches for the people to enjoy and that area. This is another photo at road level looking south. So again, just dominated by traffic. And these are the proposals here, which are being implemented right now. And these are the photos of what we are delivering on site right now. So again, this is basically more greenery, more public realm areas, more seating, more benches for everyone to enjoy the city centre. And then moving to the Lime Street scheme. So again, this is about the public realm improvements that will enhance the existing event space at St. George Hall. So that area, if you know that area, that's dominated by traffic right now. So by doing the changes to the road network that we're proposing, we are going to be able to reduce the number of lanes that we have for traffic there and then increase the areas for pedestrians and cyclists. As you can see there in the CGI, there's a segregated cycle facility there that actually runs the whole length of Lime Street and then goes also down St. John's Lane. There's going to be a gap when you come down St. John's Lane because we are still looking to the St. George Gateway, which is a future proposal that we're looking into that now, and we are going to try to address that gap for the cyclist connectivity at that location. But in terms of Lime Street, there's going to be segregated cycle facilities along the whole corridor of Lime Street. Then another 2 CGIs of the Lime Street project. So there's going to be a major reduction of roads in front of Lime Street Station and a more welcoming experience. There's going to be greater links for pedestrians and cyclists for shopping and leisure districts. The public ramp improvements proposed will enhance the area and historic surrounding buildings. We are going to deliver an enhanced and safer space for everyone. There's going to be improved connectivity for pedestrians and segregated facilities. And their quality improvements at the key hotspots will be delivered through this this project. This is one of the hot spots that we have from air quality perspective, and this scheme will tackle that. So this is the ongoing works right now. As you can see, the works are well progressing on site. We have many areas open up right now, and the scheme is progressing well, other than the frontage of Lime Street, the station itself, and St. George Centre that we have done on hold, obviously, because we are waiting for a decision from hubs. And then in terms of the bus strategy, really, so the main objectives of the connectivity scheme is actually to reduce the number of buses circulating the city centre, one of the objectives, but replace that with an efficient shuttle services. Now, that hasn't been procured yet, but Mercy Travel and the Bus Alliance are still committed to considering the implementation of a dedicated shuttle service. At this stage, connecting services will ensure passengers are able to reach their final destination. Through this change in the strategy, we are able to create an environment at the city centre that is attractive to pedestrians and cyclists and improving safety in an area which is in high demand by pedestrians. We're going to be reducing the vehicular emissions, contribute to improve air quality and reduce congestion at that location. We are going to be releasing road space that is currently being allocated to traffic, and that's going to be reallocated to pedestrians and active travel modes. There's going to be a scheme of tree planting at the city centre. Similar to the Strand, we're going to be planting trees along the whole corridor on Lime Street and at the locations that we can. And then creation of public spaces, such as the closure of Mang Island, which provided a key space in Mang Island. This scheme will also provide a key space in front of St. George Hall and in front of the station. So that's the connectivity phase one in a nutshell. Really, I've tried to go quickly, really, because I appreciate everyone's time, and there's many people in this meeting right now. And then not sure if Ollie has managed to join this meeting, because he was texting me before that he was having connectivity issues, but Ollie is the TRO expert, so he is best placed to present the TRO report itself. So not sure if you are there, Ollie.
I am.
Okay.
So I think Fernando's covered the majority of the amended report there. Last committee, councillors raised concerns about air quality implications of the scheme. So the report that we'd submitted was updated to include the background of the wider connectivity scheme, a bit more about the active travel modes which we're looking to promote as part of the scheme, and particularly the impact on emissions and the expected reduction in emissions and wasted bus mileage of driving around the city centre. And the report focuses on that. It updates the costs that were previously put forward for the delay, the cost of implication of delay. And again, the report simply recommends that we get permission to, we recommend that the original scheme is given approval, and at this stage we can press forward with implementing the scheme as is, and should in the future buses be required to use Lime Street again, at that time a TRO be amended to make that change and allow buses through again, and the necessary curb works to allow that. Thank you.
Fernando, do you wish to come back in if you got your hand raised?
Yeah, I was going to say that as part of this report, what we have done is, we have looked into 5 options. Of those 5 options, 4 of them are simply not feasible. Really, we cannot really implement those options. Option 3 has many pros and cons, really. From an enforcement perspective, it will cause several issues there, because the scheme as it is right now is self-enforceable. But if we deliver option 3, that won't be the case, and we are concerned with basically through traffic still using that area, which will have a detrimental impact on the overall scheme, really, and air quality. But what we have done is we have built passive capacity. So the scheme is at indicative design stage. We are investigating on site to then future-proof the corridor. So if in the future you want to implement option 3, we could revisit that, and it should be future-proof really to deliver that in the future if we have to do that. At this stage, as Ollie said, we recommend that we still progress with the scheme as it is, because the financial impact will be significant, because at this moment in time, if we were to progress with option 3, we'll have to start with the detailed design stage. That will take a few weeks, and during all that time, we will be basically having to pay for delay damages coming out of the contract that we have in place. So overall, it's actually financially speaking, it's much better to progress with the scheme as it is and then deliver the option 3, which, as I said, we have built passive capacity to do something like that in the future, should the members require us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, Oliver. Now move to members. Do any members have any questions that they would like to ask? Apologies for people who are putting their hands up. This is for the panel members. So this is only for myself, Councillor Kushner and Councillor Hinnigan.
Yeah, sorry, Sharon. Can I ask the buses that would go through from the through Lime Street, or would go from the south to the north? What buses there are we talking about?
Can I ask who's going to respond to that question, please?
Sharon, can I just bring in Simon Ackers, who's looked after the services side? Simon, do you want to respond to that?
Hi, Shane, Chair. Yes, Simon Ackers from Major Travel here. At the moment, there's no guaranteed services that would return through there because we have to evaluate the provision and speak with the bus operators as part of the alliance. But potentially, I think the services in question that are being talked about are the 86D and 82Ds, which are the one services that currently or stopped operating across that junction when it was severed from the 24th of January. There's also the potential for some Brownlow Hill services that might operate that way. They currently divert down London Road and come in Lime Street that way to Queen Square.
Thank you. Can I ask what's the, is there any change to in terms of the nearest bus stop to Lime Street? First of all, is there still a bus stop coming in from the north end of the city? And there's a couple of extra bays outside, or was originally planned outside the Empire and just in front of Lime Street, and there's going to be a bus stop there. So the first question is that still happening? And then the second point was, what's the nearest bus stop coming from the south end of the city to Lime Street before this scheme? What will it be after?
Okay, so for the first point, for the northbound services, the stop's effectively outside the Empire. So that bus stop is being removed as part of the works. So for those services coming in that direction, the nearest stops to access the station or to, I suppose, southbound across Lime Street would be Queen Square. That would be the nearest stop for that particular location. Coming southbound for services such as the 82 and 86, the nearest stop to access Lime Street is currently outside the Lewis's building. And previously, when it was the 86Ds, which used to operate in the morning peaks, there was the bus stop either at Queen Square or there was outside the either the Worlds Apart or the Forbidden Planet, which I can't remember which shop it was, actually on Lime Street. So that was the nearest stop before the changes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hinnigan.
Thanks, Sharon. Sharon, I know we had lots. First of all, can I thank Fernando for a really good presentation, really detailed presentation. It was great. We've had lots of talk around this in previous cabinets and stuff, and one of the questions which was raised, and I'm not sure we still had an answer on, was around, because I know there was an issue about the business district and how will people get over to that side of town, and the question was raised around potentially a free shuttle bus to take people, up to the business district, particularly around safety of women who are working late and everything else. Has anything more been explored on that front, and is there any feedback on that issue particularly?
Thank you.
Sharon, if I can come in.
Yeah.
So there was some initial discussion about a shuttle, and we do need to have that further discussion. We've got, with COVID, of course, we've got to put in an improvement plan together to government by the end of October. So we'd have to open up that discussion with the operators. Part of that, of course, is what response we get to COVID and how quickly we get that response. You know, once we get the capacity back up to 100%, what we can carry on buses, in effect. So it would come into that sort of thing. So no further development work on that, but that concept is in there, and we would seek to build that that plan into that, and to hopefully get priorities that would support such a bus shuttle to make sure we get the frequency and penetration into the city.
Thank you, Shane. Does that answer your question, Lynnie? You don't move, sorry.
It does answer my question, Sharon, and I appreciate, but it does concern me. And how long's a piece of string? Because I know everyone is looking at COVID recovery plans now, and I think it's something that we really need to push on in terms of safety and everything else. Just another question, Chair, thanks. Obviously, I'm from Speak, and I use the 82 bus, or I used to, and lots of people I know use the 82 bus. But in that corridor, can you, just so I'm very clear, is it only the 82 buses during peak hour, and is that corridor used currently? Just so I'm clear on things, because there's a lot of information to take in.
Simon, can you just come back in on that one?
Yeah, so from Speak, it was the 82Ds, which used to run in the morning peak times, and they would operate along Renshaw Street, and they would cross Lime Street into Queen Square and onto the commercial district. So I'd say it was between about 7 and 9 approximately that some journeys would extend that way. They stopped on the 24th of January when the 7s came in, and from that point all journeys operated as a normal 82 along Renshaw Street and then down Hanover Street.
Thank you. I've got a question. I know the report is quite detailed and does give a lot of information, but I just want to be very clear on the options that have been presented. There is 5 in total. So Fernando or Oliver, can you please talk me through, please, the 5 options specifically around the public realm implications, so pedestrian areas lost or gained with each option, and also around any implications, because it mentions in the report on each option there's a loss of public realm and trees. So I just want to be very clear on what each option presents. And just finally, I want to be very clear on the financial implications. So if you can just confirm financial implications for each option, please.
Okay, I can take that one. Just get to the section report. So for option 1, which option 1 would allow buses to travel northbound from Elliot Street to St George's Place only. So there wouldn't be a southbound movement for buses. So there would be the option for buses to go northbound from Elliot Street to St George's Place, and then that would run alongside the car park access road. The implication of that would be there would be a reduction in the public realm available. So the idea previously was to have only the single lane to the car park. So by allowing the extra bus lane, there's obviously a reduction in the paved area for pedestrians. So that was estimated to be a reduction of about 290 square metres, and the loss of 5 trees because they would be required for carriageway. And it's estimated that design and construction costs would be around With design costs would be around £30,000 and the construction cost would be £150,000. So the second option, buses could travel in both directions between Elliot Street and St George's Place, and so there would be the car park access would share the southbound bus lane, so they would both be running the same lane, so there would be effectively 2 lanes of traffic again. But the car park access road would obviously have to be widened to accommodate buses. So this option would reduce the pedestrian area based on the current proposal by approximately 370 metres squared, and it would require the loss of between 11 and 14 trees, and the design costs would be estimated at £60,000 and the construction costs would be estimated at £250,000. The third option would be, as it would have buses travelling northbound between Elliot Street and St George's Place only, but instead of having the bus lane and the car park access lane running alongside each other, they would be separated. And the benefit of this would be to cycle movements. Basically, cyclists wouldn't be in conflict with the buses. So there was a second design option put forward. This would require approximately 14 trees to be lost from the current proposal and would see a pedestrian area reduction of approximately 335 metres squared. Design cost would be £40,000 and the construction cost would be £250,000. Option 4, buses would be able to travel northbound and southbound between St George's Place and Elliot Street, but for the southbound journey, buses will be in a separate lane to avoid potential delays caused by any vehicles queuing to access the car park. So this takes much more capacity of the paved area, but it was something that Merseytravel were keen on to avoid any delays. So this would require a reduction in trees by 9 to 12 based on the current proposal, and a reduction in the pedestrian area of approximately 490 metres squared. Design cost will be £50,000 and the construction cost will be estimated at £350,000. Option 5, buses would travel southbound only from St George's Place to Elliot Street. This would not require the removal of any trees compared to the current design and would see the pedestrian area reduced by approximately 60 metres squared. The estimated design cost would be £30,000 and the construction would be £150,000. In terms of enforcement, the current design is basically, there's a curb line for the car park access road, which would be aligned such that any vehicle using the access road would automatically kind of have to turn towards the car park to make it self-enforcing. It'd be a very difficult manoeuvre to use the car park access road and then decide to turn and proceed along Lime Street. This is done because we put an access restriction. We proposed an access restriction on this to allow only car park access, but that kind of restriction is only enforceable by the police. Outside in London, it will be enforceable by the council, but because we're outside London, we've got different powers, so we wouldn't be able to enforce it by camera or anything like that. So that's why it's reliant on the curb line. By opening it up to allow bus movements, and we can't put that curb line in to force the cars into the car park. So any option with bus movements has enforcement implications, and we would be expecting more abuse of the access restriction. For bus lanes, if we made an option with a bus lane going northbound, say option 1 included a bus lane going northbound, for the bus lane element, we can have we could either have a camera or we could have cameras or automatic number plate recognition if the council went down that route. There'd obviously be cost implications introducing that, but we could do that. The council, parking services at the council have expressed concern in terms of the enforcement implications, because to issue tickets via that sort of medium at the moment, they would have to watch the footage, so they'd have to have someone watching to see any abuse, and they haven't got the capacity in terms of manpower to commit to that sort of enforcement. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Can I just get further clarity on Section 4 financial implications? On the what's presented on the report, it details design fees, additional works, additional delay, contract implementation cost at 20k per week. So is those ongoing and initial delay and delay design and approval sections, are they estimates?
Yeah, I can cover that, Chair. So what we have in Section 4, so first we have the design fees, then the additional cost of each option. Then we have the initial delay. So that delay was what the delay was impacting the critical path. So what we did at the first HABS meeting, because the decision got delayed, we redeployed resources elsewhere. So at that time, it was impacting the whole of the program, just those elements. So the increased cost was pretty much estimated at 20k per week. That's kind of the worst case scenario that we got back from the project manager and the site team. But then when the decision was for the delay, at some point impacted the critical path of the program. That means that attracts more weekly cost, because now we have to cover compound, we have to cover staff. So the cost increased to 59 grand per week. Again, that's estimate, and that's the worst case that has been quoted to us. We still have to review that in detail and try to obviously reduce the cost as much as possible. And then the next thing that we have there is the design and approval. So if we were to implement the option as it is right now, that wouldn't attract any more delays. So that will be 0. But if we were to implement option 1 to option 3, depending on the complexity of each option, it will take more or less to design that. So for example, option 1 will attract an additional 354 grand if it was to be implemented as part of this contract. And so option 2, 700 grand, option 3, 472 grand, option 4, the same, 472 grand, and option 5, 354. That is based on the estimated weeks that it will take us to do the design and then get all the approvals in place before we can implement any change on site. So that's how that table has been put together. The current option, which is the design fee 0, additional work 0, it has 5 weeks at 20k, it has 9 weeks at 59k. We still have to review that and try to reduce the cost as much as possible. But if the decision was to be made today to progress with the scheme as it is, the cost will be, worst case scenario, about $750,000. If we were to implement any of the other options, the cost goes from 1.3 million to 1.9, depending on the option. So as you can see, the cost increase exponentially if we were to change the design at a later stage, because we attract a lot of delay damages coming from out of the contract that we have in place.
Okay, thank you, Fernando. I may come back with a supplementary question just on financial information and public. Sorry, did you want to come in? Sorry. You're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, so so I meant to ask a follow-up question about the bus stop outside the Empire before. Sorry, could just give a reason why that bus stop's being removed in the scheme, please?
I will need to check the drawings again, but I think that we have maintained a bus stop there, but that's going to be used for rail replacement buses. So when you have any issue with rail emergencies that they have to use buses to replace that, there's going to be a bus stop. It's not in front of the bar, it's just in front of the Northwestern Hall, just out of Lime Street, and that's just being allocated to those services. Again, that's really makes a travel decision. If they want to maintain that as a bus stop, we are more than happy to work with them to try to find an alternative location for rail replacement, but taking into account the plans that they might have for stations, it does make sense to maintain that for rail replacement at this stage, and then see if we could change that at a later stage. But there's still going to be facilities in front of the station for some buses, although they are being allocated to rail emergencies.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I'll now move on. I have a number of people who have requested to speak at the committee this evening. I'll take them in the following order. Councillor Nick Small, Councillor Leonard Simic, Councillor Liam Robinson and Neil Ashcroft. Can I also ask speakers to please try and adhere to 2 minutes, just to give other people the opportunity to speak at the meeting. Nick, you were first. Councillor Small.
Thanks, Sharon. Just to, sort of by way of background, I've been generally supportive of the connectivity strategy. I've attended about 4 or 5 of the consultations in Central Library in Man Island over the last 5 years. I've represented lots of residents with various issues that they've had right throughout the consultation period on that. Some of those have been taken on board. An example of that, the initial plans didn't have segregated for Lime Street, didn't have segregated cycling for the whole of the scheme. That was included as part of after one of the consultations, and residents have raised that. So generally, I'm supportive of the connectivity strategy. I think the Strand scheme is an excellent one, and I think, you know, what we're trying to do around pedestrianisation, around improving cycling access is a good thing. So I want to make the comments that I'm going to make in the context of trying to make this the Lime Street scheme a better scheme than it is at the moment, and a scheme that really responds to the climate emergency. Because what we've done as the city is we came up with these plans, I think, initially in 2016. They went to Cabinet in 2016. And since then, we've declared the climate emergency and the very ambitious targets we've got of becoming climate neutral by 2030. I do also want to welcome something today, that the 3 new bus layover spaces on Commutation Row and on St John's Lane. Again, I think this is really positive, and the bus hub has been really controversial. I know that we've been working to try to mitigate some of the problems with how that's been operating. And I think these 3 new bus layovers will take away the need to put more layover spaces on the south side of Old Haymarket. And hopefully that makes the bus hub operate in a much better way than it has done over the past few months. The issues that I've got really with Lime Street are all around buses. The first comment I'd make is around sort of hierarchy of travel. You know, we are supposed to be supporting pedestrians and cyclists and then buses. It seems strange that we are facilitating what is access by cars to a car park in quite an unsustainable way at the expense of getting bus travel to go between Lime Street, the south side of Lime Street, and Queen Square. Second point I'd make is around integrated transport. We're not integrating buses in with rail travel here. We're not making it easy for people to access Lime Street station. Many people who might have luggage or might have mobility issues, might have prams with them or whatever, are not going to be able to access Lime Street by bus in the way that they can at the moment. And I think we need to be building in the principle of integrated transport, integrated public transport, into everything that we do. Second point I'd make is around the commercial district. We are putting barriers to people accessing jobs from the south side of Liverpool in the commercial district. We want to build back better. We want to bring more jobs into the commercial district, and this makes it more difficult for people to access those jobs by public transport in the commercial district at peak times. The third point I'd make, and I've made before at this committee, is around Brownlow Hill. I've got residents living on Brownlow Hill itself, and they depend on, many are older people, many have mobility issues, who depend on buses to get into the city centre, to get to St John's, to get into the main retail area of the city centre. They are not able to do that in the same way because of this, because we've taken buses off Brownlow Hill and put those buses onto London Road. Those people who are living in the Bullring area on the Brownlow Hill side are telling me that they have more difficulty accessing buses because of this. So to conclude, Chair, I'd appeal to the committee. We need to be looking around how we build back better after COVID. We need to be looking and future-proofing what's going to happen. I hope is going to happen over bus re-regulation. It is on the agenda. It is on the cards. I very much hope this is going to happen. And I think what we've seen over the past few years is a situation where, in response to what the bus operators and what Mersey Travel have thought were going to happen because of the connectivity strategy, they have made changes to the bus services. Those changes have already been made. What we need to be looking at is what is the bus service that we want. We need to be looking at that as part of a conversation, a debate over bus re-regulation. What is the service that we want? What is the service that we need? And we build our transport infrastructure around that. So I think we're going about this in the wrong way. And I think COVID is an opportunity to build back better and to support more public transport and support a better bus service. So the appeal that I'd make to the committee tonight is now's not the time to be cutting off options for the future. We've got, I think, 5 different options on the table. My personal preference would be an option that keeps buses northbound and southbound through this. I can live with option 3, which is what Mersey Travel are doing, but don't shut off those options when we don't need to do it. Now's not the time to do that. We need to be looking at how we build back better and how we build the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, to be able to do that.
Thank you, Nick. I forgot to put my timer on, so I think you got away with a couple of more minutes there. And just
apologies for that.
A lot of what you've said is around buses and bus routes. This is not a Mersey Travel meeting, but we do have Mersey Travel representation here this evening. So if I can ask Shane to talk about the comments for integrated transport and also around bus services from Brownlow Hill and the commercial district. And then can I ask Fernando to come in and speak about the access to St John's car park? And I think you mentioned, Nick, that you believe that the scheme is, correct me if I'm wrong in my language, does not respond to climate change. So if Fernando can just come in on those points too. Thank you.
Shall I go first, Chair, on some of the points you've raised? I think on Brownlow Hill and on the services, I'll let Simon come in on that, but I'll pick up on a couple of points there. The integration, it's a valid point about getting greater integration between all modes of transport. That, clearly that is not anything, that's something you need to work over a long period of time. We've had Lime Street and Queen Square separated for a long period of time. Our long-term ambitions, to be honest with you, on the bus strategy and rail strategy, is to have an integrated new hub, but that's tied to NPR, the Northern Powerhouse Rail, and whether we win the argument for a line and have a centralised hub for bus and rail. So that's long-term. It is a long-term away, but it's already in the strategies when they were produced a couple of years ago. That ambition has not moved on that side. So on the integration side, what we're trying to do across the piece is every time we seek to do new infrastructure, where we can, we built new state. We're working on St James at the moment station. We hope to have a new station down there at St James, and actually all that access to St James will be through walking and cycling. There's no park and ride provision. There's only a vehicle aspect. So what I'm getting at, it's a piecemeal growth to get to integration. If we get bus reform, which was tossed about, the business case will be a proposition for the sub-region to make probably in about 15, 18 months' time. And even if the decision was made, obviously, to go to that next step, it would probably take a minimum of 4 or 5 years to fully implement, because you'd have to do the network maybe 20% per year, because you've got to maintain public transport while you make the change for that, if that was a decision ultimately made. So I just say that that's in the plans, but it has a real timeline about it on that side. It was brought up a little bit earlier about the shuttle. We will raise that as part of the bus improvement plan, but we do need to discuss with the operators and put a bid together. That improvement plan gets submitted to government by the end of October, assuming that the expression of interest goes in, and that's due in on the 18th of June this year. So it touches across some of the integration aspects, I hope, on what we've done, how we're doing it, and what the long-term plans are. If I can just ask Simon to come in on the Brownlow Services question.
Thanks, Shane. So Brownlow Hill Services, they did see a slight reduction from the 24th of January when the rerouting was introduced, and that was based on responses to the opportunity to comment that we had, where we did receive a number of comments about accessing Queen Square along that corridor. Appreciate not necessarily from the Brownlow Hill area itself. So what ourselves and the operators did was we looked at what could be done, and the 79C service was rerouted to operate down London Road rather than down Brownlow Hill. So that's 3 buses an hour. The 79, all of those journeys remain on Brownlow Hill at the moment, along with the 7. So there's approximately about 10 buses an hour during the daytime that still run down Brownlow Hill. I think completely understand the access from Brownlow Hill to Queen Square, because that's not a difficult connection to make, because the nearest stop is at the bottom of Brownlow Hill by the car park. As part of the original proposals, we did consider introducing an additional stop on Hanover Street near to Central Station to mitigate that walk and try and improve the access to the main shopping area, rather than the next stop being outside the Tesco and Home Bargains further down. That was initially not possible on safety reasons. However, that was before the introduction of the bus priority along there. So that could be something that is revisited to see, have circumstances change with the introduction of the priority. And that might improve some of that connectivity a little bit for some people.
Thank you. Fernando?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So with regards to the access to St. John's car park or the through traffic there, the biggest issue with the Lime Street at that location, it was actually the through traffic. So if you think about that, there's signage around the city that, for example, if you're at the north of the city and you want to go to the airport, it points you towards Lime Street, which makes no really sense. So cars kind of traveling from the north to the south shouldn't be using Lime Street, because that's actually cutting through the city centre, which adds to the congestion. So what we're proposing to do is kind of the severance of Lime Street for through traffic, but still you have the car park there. There is an attraction for a lot of cars that goes to that destination, is not through traffic. So we still needed to provide some sort of access. Cutting that for that car park will put actually more cars going around Skyhorn Street or Elliot Street, which again is the same location. So you are attracting the same amount of traffic in the end, but going around in circles, if it makes sense to get to that location. So increase the issue with air quality. So this was felt at the business case stage, and I was involved at that stage. This is kind of what I've seen in the reports, is that it was felt as the best option going forward from a traffic management perspective. In terms of the climate change commitments, this scheme, not just the Lime Street, the whole of connectivity phase 1 is in full support of our commitments with regards to climate change. So as part of the rerouting strategy, when we did the assessment at the business case stage, we are talking about a reduction of 2,000 tons of CO2 per year and 900,000 kilometers per year. Obviously, Message Travel have done some changes to the strategy, so that may change slightly, but we still expect a significant reduction of emissions in the city centre. So that's in full support of the climate change, as is promoting active travel and pedestrian better facilities, really. So those are the responses to those 2 key points. Thank you. You're on mute, sorry.
First time this evening, apologies. Can I now bring Councillor Lynnie in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, most of the points that I wanted to make were already made by Councillor Small, but I've been listening to the responses now, and my worry really is that, are we doing the best we can for the users of the city centre? Are we truly doing the best we can? I'm worried that the residents from the north, from the south, will not be able to connect well enough given this situation. I'm also worried that visitors to Liverpool, when they exit from the Lime Street with their baggage, where will they go? Where will the bus be? So it seems to me that lots of the answers that were given in response to Councillor Small were, well, yes, but we will revisit this. Yes, in the future, we will leave it open. So the question is really, are we right now, and look at us all, so many people are here in this meeting so late, and this is an issue that's been going on from 2016. I've been in the council since 2019, and this is an issue that's been repeatedly at our meetings at Regeneration Committee, and also it's come to Climate Change Committee as well, and we have all councillors there from every group been saying that there is an issue with this connectivity between the city for our residents, because we are here to represent the residents really. So it is really my worry that we are not necessarily doing the best we can for the residents right now with this particular scheme as it stands right now. So this problem of...
Can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make sure that I've got your questions down. So is your question?
Yeah, my question is, okay, are we providing the best possible access for residents across the city in terms of visitors as well, in terms of integrated travel? And I suppose it's pretty similar questions that were answered already by Councillor Small, but it's the issue that keeps coming back and back and back, and it's not leaving us alone. And it's the question of having a really sustainable city and sustainable travel which is public transport travel, that is, it seems to me, not being prioritized at the moment. So, you know, it's the same old questions of access for the residents, but also, as I can see, access for the visitors to Liverpool as well. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring Sharon to answer on the integrated travel question again, and the when people do obviously access the city centre. Fernando, you may be best placed for that in terms of people coming in from Lime Street.
Thank you, Chair. I think the integration is really is just one of those areas that you're forever looking to improve, because it you know, the offer is never where we all want it. So you end up in each of the schemes. When this scheme was conceptually put together, it was looked across the city. That's why it's hard to look at one part of a bigger picture on the city centre connectivity on that side. So, you know, can we improve on integration? We can improve. Putting it off to another day, it's not that it's realistic about when you get your opportunity, you go through and improve it. On the scheme that's on the table, there is the option, and it is a passive option, for option 3. What's highlighted here is at this stage within the particular contract, it would be quite expensive to issue a variation to a live contract. And that's really one of the financial sides of that. So the integration, you'll never be able to answer. We have to do the betterment, and there is improvement about integration. It just takes, it's such piecemeal because it's the nature of it. You know, Councillor Small brought up a little bit earlier about the decision whether you have bus reform or not. That could make a huge difference about the concept of integration. And it will be about timetables and linkage, which isn't viable at the moment because you've got a deregulated bus market and a regulated rail offer, and they're just not linked. So that, you know, when people use the word, yeah, all of that is integrated, is betterment, but there's a lot of things that you need to put in place. So it's piecemeal that you work through. We've tried to work through the city centre connectivity because the biggest driver would probably be to minimise the amount of bus mileage that's running through the city. And it was to minimise the air pollution on that was one of the biggest drivers from that perspective. When we had this discussion, and it is a few years ago, the city had ambitions. There was operators that we had to come to a proposition, and then there was Mersey Travel trying to coordinate those services, and we came out with a composite report that tried to come to a compromise on what was a solution that supported active travel. So it's a really difficult question, Councillor. You know, I wouldn't argue there's betterment to be done, but putting it off is, I wouldn't say put it off, I would say improvement each time you get an opportunity, but it's very piecemeal, I'm afraid. So it's not, you know, it's like, I can't give you a definitive answer, but I'm trying to give you the essence of that answer.
Hi, Gillian. Have we lost Sharon there? Have we lost Gillian?
No, I mean, I'm scrolling on the list of attendees.
Okay.
Yeah, did you re-invite her? Yeah, she's back now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer. I think it's best to move on to someone else.
Apologies, I've had to rejoin the meeting briefly then through a connection issue. Lena, can I just ask if Fernando responded to your question around access to the car park?
No,
access from Lime Street.
Yeah, the issue is access for people. You know, yeah. I mean, I've got some answer in terms of integration, and the other is about the access to the city. And also, I suppose, access for people with these baggages, you know, that are not necessarily, it looks very beautiful. It looks beautiful for pedestrians and for the cyclists. Looks gorgeous, but I'm not sure how usable it is if it's good for the users. But that's more of the point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Liam Robinson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sharon. I'll just give a couple of my own sort of contributions here. Can I start by just thanking Fernando for what I think is a really good presentation, and overall the city centre connectivity scheme is great. You know, we really should be kind of welcoming and applauding something that is going to be reducing traffic through our city centre and is going to be kind of supporting active travel and sort of improving things with regards to the air quality crisis and how we deal with the climate emergency. So overall, it's a fantastic scheme. But I think one of the things that's important for me, though, is that it is a scheme that's evolved over the years. I think probably the best example of how it's evolved actually is the bus gate on Hanover Street, because one of the things that sort of was very clear from the consultation that we did at Mersey Travel around how the bus service would change is exactly how people wanted to get from A to B across the city, and that evidence was vital in being able to kind of push for the bus gate that you yourself, Sharon, were integral in making sure that we got along with other people. So much so that actually with the bus gate we've been able to accommodate virtually every service in a way that passengers wanted it to sort of go to its end destination, with the exception of the ATA, which has had to go down Duke Street, although we think that hopefully could go back down Hanover Street, with the only exceptions being two services that can't complete their journeys, being the 82D and the 86D because of the sort of severance of Lime Street. And I actually think here's an opportunity to put in place another important final tweak around option 3. That's my own personal view of what we should pursue, to make sure we have got that ability to have the right infrastructure to allow not just those two services to sort of potentially come back into use, but potentially look at other services that could come back into use. Because the final point I wanted to sort of make, and Nick's touched on this and Shane's touched on this, and dare I say I'll be a little bit more political about it as well, is about buses reform. And I'm not here to bore anyone with the vagaries of the Bus Services Act 2017 because no one would get the tea tonight. But we do have to jump through hoops of fire that the government have put in place to utilise those devolved powers. But I can tell you very bluntly, from the Metro Mayor's perspective, that we will be utilising those powers. Now, without going into the details of London-style bus franchise and EPs and other means of doing it, we will be moving into a world by which it'll be the Metro Mayor and the Combined Authority working with all the district councils that will be setting the bus network and how we want that to work for our communities and our passengers. And for me, it's really important ahead of that we have the right bus infrastructure that allows us to put those services in place. So very much kind of take on board sort of the very important stuff that Fernando and others have brought to the table. But my view is that option 3 is the right one we should be looking to proceed with. So thank you.
Liam, can I just check, do you need a response from any of the officers in relation to your comments, or was it?
No, I think that, look, they've already been responded to in other ways from the questions from Lena and Nick, so I don't need a response.
Can I now invite Neil Ashcroft, please, to address the committee? Neil online. Hi, Neil.
I'm here. Obviously, I represent St John's Shopping Centre, the businesses within the centre, along with the wider St George's Quarter, so the cultural and historic hub. We do support the scheme as has been proposed. We are a massive supporter of active travel. Converse with some of the arguments that we've heard today, car park usage and the use of cars to the centre is not the most prevalent transport method for the centre. We're community-based, and therefore alternative travel methods such as walking, cycling, bus and train use actually makes up the predominant participation for the centre. Our concerns are that with the ongoing discussions and ongoing delays, this is having a real impact to the detriment of our businesses. So in the centre, 62% of the shopping centre is made up of independent business. So these aren't faceless corporations. These are businesses that rely on sales week to week, month to month. And with the delay, with this scheme, we've seen their businesses extremely negatively affected. So the reopening, the recovery, for example, this week, they are performing around 40% worse than they should be, even taking into account the pandemic. The car park that reopened is performing 70% worse than it should be, even taking into account the pandemic. Due to the delay, it's meant that the commitment from LCC to keep Lime Street open as an access point to our car park was reneged on, and that remains closed. And there's now plans to also close Elliot Street to our car park as well. So where we're talking about that longer term recovery, there's a very real impact that's happening now to our businesses, where they're being affected day to day, week to week, where several of them are not going to survive these ongoing consultations and discussion points, where we're seeing a repeated kind of return to previous arguments, certainly from the business community that we represent. Our understanding was that a consultation has been had over a number of years. We got to a point where a scheme was agreed. We supported that scheme, and very much that was then boots on the ground and ready to go to put that scheme into place. These arguments that are supplementary, although valid, for us, it's very much about getting on with that scheme as it is and supporting businesses and supporting the recovery of the city, of which these debates are not helping with. And I understand there are valid arguments to help with active travel and making the city better in the long term, but certainly the economic recovery is extremely adversely affected currently by these discussions. And that's all I wanted to add to the debate.
Thank you, Neil. Can I just ask before we move on to invite other people to speak, do any officers want to make any representation No? Okay. So we've got a number of people who have got their hands up. I'm just going to ensure that I've got everyone's name, because in previous meetings it has changed the order of people who've requested to speak. So if I take Councillor Laura Robinson-Collins, Councillor Jane Corbett, Councillor Hetty Wood, and I can't see any other indications to speak at this time.
Councillor Mumby's indicated, Chair.
And Councillor Mumby. Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Laura Robinson-Collins to address the committee, please?
Thank you, Chair, and again, thanks to Fernando for the presentation on the whole of the connectivity scheme. I endorse many of my colleagues' comments that there are many excellent elements of the scheme, and overall the scheme is supported by, I would think, everybody here, including myself. However, I remain excessively concerned about the lack of integration in terms of bus transport on Lime Street and bus transport integrating with the mainline train station, which is, of course, our main link out of the city and to London. In fact, I was so concerned about that I've stepped down from the executive this week, because I was not prepared to be part of a process that meant that we ended up with a public transport system that was less integrated at this stage than it was a couple of months ago. And I think I take Shane and other people's points that, you know, there's lots of other elements to integration that we need to be working on. And there's some great things going on around St James Station and things like that. But I think it's a real worry that we're actually, at this moment, looking at a design that will mean we'll have a less integrated system than we had a couple of months ago before the work on Lime Street started. So I am sort of concerned about some of the issues around the democratic process. I'm sorry to the colleague from St John's Centre that we're holding up the work by asking these questions as democratic representatives, but I think it's really important. I was concerned by the way the Cabinet report came in January 2020. It came very late. It was a supplementary report to Cabinet then. I did raise that with the Mayor at the time. I wasn't able to be at that meeting, but I did raise those concerns in writing, and that report wasn't shared with me, even though I was the Cabinet member then with the responsibility for air quality and transport before it went into the public domain. I'm also concerned that if the TRO is required to meet this design, then really the outcome of this committee has sort of always been a foregone conclusion, because there's supposed to be a quasi-judicial committee. But if the design is dependent on that TRO, then I'm not sure how that can actually work out. I do think we need to just pause momentarily. I appreciate we've already got some delays. We've had all sorts of delays with COVID and everything. It's a very long-term project. There seems still to be a lack of information from the air quality side. I don't know where the modelling is from our air quality team. Say we're in the middle of things like a clean air zone and a clean air plan. I'm not sure how this plan integrates with the clean air plan. So I'd ask once again that we just pause momentarily, do a little bit more investigation on the air quality, and look again at making sure that by stopping these buses, we're not meaning that we're going to have more cars going forward, and that we're actually having a negative impact on the carbon reduction plans and on the air quality plans. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Laura. Can I bring, just on the comment, Shane, would you like to comment on, again, the lack of integration? And was there another comment? Sorry, Laura.
I'm concerned that we haven't actually got modelling by our own air quality team at the council, given that we're doing the clean air zone, the clean air plan. I know that's not here now, but I'm saying, can we maybe go and get that information and bring it back again?
Okay. And just, yeah. Shane, would you like to just come in on those points? I'm just slightly a bit confused. Sorry, because Cabinet member or previous Cabinet member for climate change asking for air quality monitoring to be conducted, but I'll take it. We can take it away.
Okay. I think on the city centre connectivity, to be fair, the bus services and the city centre connectivity was schemes that have moved through a period of time as to what the best proposition is, and then looking at the transport system at the same time. If you're saying that connectivity has moved away from directly in front of the station, that is a fact, it has moved. If you're saying, did we have connectivity and did we have to go into Queen Square if you came into the city? Yes, you had to walk to that previously. That, you know, so that option has always been in the city. It's something that we want to deal with, a truly integrated hub at a stage in the future if we get that opportunity. It's that sort of level. The difficulty is, and you know, I think one of the councillors touched on a little bit earlier, I suppose it's priority: walking, cycling, active travel, bus. There are always going to be clashes at times as to which one has a greater footprint in any of the work that we're doing going forward. We've got the Green Corridors programme that we're taking forward over the next 10 years. And there's going to have to be compromises. Is the priority for a cycle facility along a route, or is it the bus? And you're always coming to compromises. So in a way, it is difficult about making that priority. And it comes down to each location. At this city centre location, that there was a view that, as there is on the Strand, and it's not for me to defend because they're not my schemes, they're Liverpool schemes. And we're just coming in to put a transport service alongside what we got for infrastructure. But there was a view that there was too much separation, and you make a judgment call on that. It is a difficult one on that side. So the integration, yes, there is further aspect to walk. And even when we get to park and ride, and we found people travelling a vehicle less than 3/4 of a mile to park and ride to go into a station, when really the obvious thing is to walk and active. So what I'm getting at is it is a difficult one that you have to compromise. So there isn't an obvious answer. You know, from Councillor Hershey raised, it is further from Lime Street for those bus connections. There's no disputing that, but it is a system that can work. It has active travel as part of that. It can make it. You know, I think what I'm really saying is there isn't an exact answer to that. That is the compromise on integration. And at the end of the day, you know, the city do control that infrastructure. And
sorry, Shane, you're on mute. Sorry, apologies, Shane, you must have muted yourself at the end there.
Right, apologies. I'm just saying there is always compromises as to which priority takes. Is it active travel? Is it that public transport? Is it that cycling? And you have to come to compromise. And if you ask 10 different views on a particular issue, you might get 10 different solutions. But it is a difficult one, this. So the answer to the question is the buses are further from Lime Street. There's no question about that. But you have to look at the round of what's trying to be achieved here. So to get the circulation of the buses and still accommodate the use of public transport, you get the benefit of the 900,000 kilometres or whatever that figure finally is, or the 2,000 tonnes for reduction in CO2. That's why you have to look at the whole picture. That's my comments back.
Thank you, Shane. Jane?
Thank you, Sharon. I'm slightly more confused now after what Shane said, to be honest with you, Shane. So my question would be, is it not possible to have, is it possible to have not an either or and prioritising, but a full integration, which goes back to what Lynnie was asking about, what is the best way forward on this? And rather than saying the city does this and then we come in and do the other from Mersey Travel and all combined authorities, it should really be a joint approach where it all comes together. And the other issue is, for me, is there not a way of designing in more flexibility longer term than designing it out at this stage and then having to add it in? So option 4 actually is a much better option because it's north and south, and it keeps the car flow from the car park separate, so it doesn't back up with buses. It goes back to Liam's point, is can we not design in now the options around re-regulation of buses? So we've got that flexibility. Could somebody tell me about how this impacts on the cabs, the Hackney cabs, on Scalone Street and Lord Nelson Street in terms of the TRO? Because I'm getting really worried that it's already bad, very bad on both of those streets, particularly on Scalone Street, where people are taking sometimes 20 minutes, if not longer, the cab drivers to come in, queue up, come out. That causes air pollution inside Lime Street as well, and there's queues of people waiting behind the barriers. And then the last question goes back to the air pollution levels. I understand that there is an issue. I understand that there is a priority, or it has been prioritised, about trying to make sure that we don't have empty buses floating around the city endlessly. I get that. And that relates to the air pollution. However, what we're going to end up with, I would think, and I hope I'm wrong, so please tell me if I'm wrong here, Islington is already a very, very difficult, negative, and extremely dangerous air pollution spot. No two ways about that. We know that. We were given that as part of our scrutiny within regeneration. What, therefore, work has been done to ensure that that doesn't become worse by a TRO, that you close off Lime Street, because what will happen is you'll get more congestion on Islington coming down, going onto Hunter Street, coming down onto Byram Street, then trying to get round the entrance to the old tunnel and in and out of the old tunnel. That will become worse. And I've got residents in Everton who walk across, including myself, walk across Islington regularly over to the Fabric District as well. So it just, I think we're missing some jigsaw pieces here. Thanks very much, Sharon.
Thank you, Jane. Fernando, would you like to come answer those questions, please, around Hackney cabs, air pollution levels and congestion along Islington, please?
And designing in and out, Sharon, as well. Yeah, the options form, option 4.
Yeah, sorry, Jane, are you saying you support option 4?
Yeah, I'm saying the question I asked about, could we not have a designing in rather than designing out, including for option 4?
Yeah, in terms of option 4, the issue with option 4 is that then we won't be able to enforce stopping through traffic at that location. So if you implement option 4, pretty much we don't change anything there, and you still attract all that traffic through Lime Street to try to access the south of the city, because I mean, we won't have any option to enforce that because there's access to the car park. You're going to be missing cars with buses, so there's no way to have an automated system. So we will have to have an officer watching the screen really to check who is doing what and when, and we don't have capacity, as simple as that. That's what Ollie said before. So option 4, it couldn't be recommended on those bases, and also is the one that reduced more the areas for pedestrians and cyclists at that, not cyclists, sorry, for pedestrians and trees, because it's the one that will maintain the more area for carriageway rather than pedestrianizing the area. So it's an option that we have put forward. We actually put that forward to Mersey Travel and the Bus Alliance, and they also raised concerns. So I don't have the report with me right now. I'm trying to look into that, but they also raised concerns that basically option 4 is not one of the viable ones. And they raise operational capacity concerns with regards to Queen's Square, meaning that no service will be introduced until this can be determined post-COVID. So we will be making some changes now that we don't even know if they are going to be used. But in any case, we put all options on the table because we were asked by hubs to pull together an options report, and that's what we did. We went through all the options we could think of, and we put those on that report. In terms of the air pollution and traffic congestion, what we have done is we have done a traffic model that basically covers the whole city centre at that location, so includes Islington and other areas. That traffic model was done by our consultants. It was checked by the combined authority as part of the full fitness case approval process, and also has been checked in some locations by third parties that they wanted to check a few bits and pieces from their own perspective. So you're right that closing Lime Street obviously will push traffic elsewhere, but we have modeled that, and we think that the benefits of closing Lime Street at Lime Street location, because that's one of the worst hotspots that we have right now, and the standing traffic that we have there all the time, we think that the benefits are far superior by doing this. But again, that's coming out of the traffic modeling work that we have done. So basically, we're just trusting the engineers there. But as I said, that has gone through a really robust approval process to make sure that that model is correct and it has been tested in detail. And in terms of the Hackneys and the Skelhorn and Lord Street, if I may, can I ask Ollie to come in, because he's our TRO expert, so he knows more about regulations and what restrictions we may or may not have changed there. So Ollie, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, the existing taxi ranks on Skelhorn Street and Lord Nelson Street are unchanged, but there's a proposed additional taxi rank on Lime Street itself outside the Northwestern Hotel, or former Halls building, which is soon to become a hotel. So there's a small rank there to serve that side of Lime Street as well. So that was an improvement for taxi access to and from the station.
Sorry, Sharon.
James, if you want to come back then, sorry.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, sorry, the issue about the Hackneys, it's very, very bad on Skelhorn Street already. So is there not going to be any redesign there? And does the TRO actually block them out, or are they meant to go north and south? If we can't have option 4, at least look at option 2. We need the north-south. We can't just have one way. Thanks very much.
There were no proposed changes to the existing taxi ranks on Lord Nelson or on Skelhorn. So the options for them, if there were a bus lane provided, it would be likely that taxis will be able to use it, because that's something that's commonly accepted across the city. At the moment, no, there would be no link for them to travel directly, say, from Skelhorn Street to St John's Lane, or vice versa.
Can I invite Councillor Hetty-Woods, please?
Thank you very much. Just to start with, just a point that I've picked up from what Fernando just said. I'm a bit confused as to why we can't do enforcement even just beyond the entrance to the car park, particularly using the same technology that we're using to do the Hanover Street bus gate, for example. If we can do it there with automatic recognition, why can't we do it a few meters away? I don't understand why it would require an officer to be present. All you need to do is ensure that the cameras and equipment are beyond the entrance to the car park, and that seems fairly simple to my mind. So I'm sorry if I'm missing something obvious in highways there. I would just like to reiterate, I do think it would be beneficial if we can keep the integration of north and south in the buses. This is something that has been raised over several years, and even when we had this discussion, this committee in December, I think we were meant to have options brought back by January. So there has been delays, and I do apologise to St John's Market and to other people being like that. But we're just trying to get it right and trying to do it as best as we can. I'd also just like to raise a concern that I have, that this meeting is in fact ultra-virus, because meetings such as this, which are quasi-judicial, are there in the terms of reference. It says, to receive and consider all representations and objections made in respect of orders and other actions under legislation, effectively, to the extent that these functions are not discharged elsewhere within the council. Now, they were clearly debating the options. We're clearly not debating one particular TRO. We're looking at different design options, which should be debated by Cabinet and then brought to a TRO, with the ability for them to be scrutinised at Select Committee. This committee, I think, has gone out of the bounds of
I interject, sorry, Councillor Woods. If you were at the beginning of the meeting where I read out exactly what we were here to discuss, was the TRO that was advertised. So the recommendation, whilst we're looking at options here, which has been from the recommendations from previous meetings. This meeting is around the original TRO.
Then I would ask why we are debating options at this meeting, because that itself is out of bounds for the terms of reference of the meeting.
Councillor Woods, that was because members brought to this committee on the 15th of December that they requested options. So I think I will speak to Roger Mann offline at this moment, but you know, trying to use a technical comment.
Sharon, it's a technical point.
Just bear with us, please, Councillor Woods.
Chair, if you wish, I can comment on that now. It is within the committee's terms of reference to modify TROs, and therefore these other options could be delivered by a modification of the TRO. So it's perfectly proper for those to be brought forward and for the committee to consider them. So I'm satisfied that the committee is acting within its powers.
Thank you, Roger.
Can I ask, is the committee actually thinking about modifying a TRO, or is it debating the options that have been brought forwards because the committee is because representations have previously been asked at the committee?
We'll come back to you. Sorry, go on, Roger.
Sorry, well, as I say, that is within the powers of the committee. So if committee, after hearing all the representations, wishes to promote a modification of the TRO to deliver one of those other options, then it certainly could do that. They'd then have to be advertised because, well, we'd have to sort of make contact with all of the objectors to see if they wanted to make any further representations. But it is certainly within the powers of the committee to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Mumby, would you like to come in, please? Steve, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. Firstly, can I really echo the comments of other colleagues, particularly I think Councillor Corbett's comments about the fact that really we need to look at this again. Certain challenges to keeping Lime Street open have been identified by officers, and I hear them, but I've heard those arguments before, frankly, and Councillor Robinson, who was here, will remember when we sat down with the bus companies, Mersey Travel, parking services and highways officers, when the 82 was diverted away down Park Lane and away from Hanover Street. This is going back 4 years, I think, 4 years. And initially we were told that, Roger was there, I think, that we couldn't enforce it, the parking services couldn't deliver it, but we came to a solution. And that was temporarily before the bus gate was even introduced, but on the basis that we planned to introduce bus gate, that we would have a bus stop right next to St John's Market, which allowed, I think, the 82C service to provide access to St John's Market and the station. One of the problems we've got here is that the whole bus service really in the south and east of the city has been reshaped because of the anticipation of Lime Street closing. So what you're looking at is not just the 82D and the 86D, but large numbers of buses that have in a sense been diverted. So if we wanted to get to where we want to get to, we wouldn't start from here. Similarly, I think we're looking the wrong way at the financial challenges that are involved. Yes, it's legitimate to say these are the potential contract costs. And you're a long-standing partner of the council. And what I would say is if the committee was minded to rethink the scheme, is officers would need to go away and talk to Amy and say, one, what savings could we make in the contract? Given that we're long-term strategic partners, what savings could we make which might defray extra costs? Because you don't just manage contract relationships, not contracts, in legal terms. That is perfectly doable. I think the argument about enforcement, again, is thin. And actually, the argument that parking services have been finding it difficult to enforce from behind a camera, on that basis, let's pull all the parking attendants off the street, because that's a lot more labour intensive than sitting watching a camera to enforce. So I think that's an argument. We don't want to do this. It's too difficult. But I think the job is to find a way. Now, you can't, as a committee, I'm not expecting you to be able to dot all the I's and cross all the T's at this stage. But what you can do is listen to the arguments, which have come overwhelmingly from the councillors who are represented here, who know something about the impact on the lives of our constituents. And it's not just about travel. It's about, for example, access to St John's Market. And I heard the argument from the representative of the businesses, but I also know that lots of people on low incomes from the south of centre want to be able to shop at St John's Market. And the indirect impact of that is to restrict access to St John's Market. And it diverts shoppers down to Liverpool 1. St John's Market's got a bad time already. And actually, St John's Market might be a very good reason for councillors to think about why act in haste, repent at leisure is wise advice. Because we've acted in haste a couple of times in St John's Market and it hasn't worked out very well. So I think this is a case where pause. And the final point I want to make is, yes, there will be costs to delaying the scheme. But letting it go ahead as it is has costs that you can't quantify and aren't before you. Firstly, if you do change your mind, you'd have to do it again. It'll be a whole lot easier to pause than it would be to put that in and rebind it. I am passionately committed to the idea of a shuttle bus service, but that is at best irrelevant for this discussion, because actually you're putting a nail in the coffin of a shuttle bus service if you close up Lime Street. And once that has been mapped out, a lot of these problems become easier, but we're closing off the option for that. So I really urge you to think again. It's always difficult. Yeah, nobody's going to stand up and cheer you if you say we need to pause, but it's far better unless you're really convinced that this is the best way forward, to pause and say we need to look at this again.
Thanks, Steve. I think just in relation to your comments around St John's Market, we have had representation at tonight's committee meeting from Neil Ashcroft, representing St John's Precinct, and I believe that's for all their tenants who are supportive of the scheme as it is. And just to ensure that I captured all your questions, was it around the shuttle bus?
If you're taking into account a shuttle bus as an option, you're closing it off by closing off Lime Street. The other point was about the need to sit down and the additional costs, which aren't before you and can't be before you if you let this go ahead and want to rethink. So what I'm saying is you've got a set of projected figures before you, but there's a load of figures that aren't before you, and for that reason alone, I'm suggesting it would be irresponsible to proceed because you don't have enough information.
Thank you. Can I ask Fernando, would you like to come in on any of those points?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair. So, in terms of the delayed cost, I mean, the contract that we have in place with NMCN is an NEC3 contract, which relies massively on the program. So, and that actually works both ways. So, if the contractor finishes the scheme later than the completion date, there will be delayed damages that will be recovered from them. But likewise, if we stop them now from doing these works and impacts the critical path, which is what our contract administration team is saying, that will attract cost. And the 59K that we have put in that report, that's the worst case scenario, but that won't come down massively because the bulk of that cost is made of staff and the amount of expenses that we have to have in place, the TM that we have to have in place to manage all this work. So if you were to pause the scheme now, we will have to maintain the working area safe, we'll have to maintain the temporary traffic management, we have to maintain staff maintaining all of that. So that's what is attracting all these costs. So the 59K, again, that's the worst case scenario that has been quoted to us, but that won't come down massively. This is still going to attract a significant cost. And if you see the table that we have included in option 4, in section 4, we have split that down in lots of different items. So it's really clear where the cost is coming from. So actually, delivering the scheme as it is right now, and then once we finish, because we're gonna build this passive capacity within the scheme, then we have to go back and do option 3. It's actually financially speaking, it's more efficient than actually pause the scheme now to do the changes. And that's the way this contract works, because we actually use this contract to also put pressure on contractors across the network to finish the schemes when they have to do it. And then if not, we're able to apply delay damages to them. So in terms of attracting costs, I know that it's counterintuitive to say, well, it's actually better to deliver the scheme as it is and then do some changes that do the changes now. But that is actually how the contract works, and that table is there to try to show that in the most transparent and clear manner that we could think of. But if you want to take offline that table, and I could talk you through that table and where the costs are coming from, I'm more than happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Jill, can I just ask, is there anyone who has their hand up that hasn't spoken yet? Please, just in case I've missed anyone.
Chair, I have my hand up. Sharon, I've got my hand up.
Sorry,
yes, you want to?
That is. Lano Bain, sorry, Anya.
Oh, it's all right, Jill. It's because I'm on the wrong computer. Is it all right if I come in, Sharon?
Yes, please.
Thanks. It was there was a number of points that I wanted to make, and then obviously to follow on with. If I don't want to sort of jump on Shane again, but he raised a number of points when we were talking about the hierarchy of travel and about accessibility. And when we're talking about accessibility, it's about how we have, when we're talking about the hierarchy and the importance of walking, cycling, and then public transport. For me, the reason why public transport is so high up on that is about accessibility. So parents with children, older people, people with disabilities, and of course the financial impact. So from a councillor who's in the north of the city being able to access into the city centre using the bus service is really important. Shane also mentioned about park and ride, and again, if you have children or if you are disabled, that the need to do park and ride in that distance is again because of access and about that ability to get into the city centre. Not everything is always about the use of cars in the sense of for lots of our residents. And I think the way that we have on this scheme promoted cars above public transport is a worry, especially for people in the north of the city, where the use of cars, and if Lynnie was talking about living in Speak, but we also know the use of car usage for our residents is extremely low, and the use of public transport for them is very high. And for the areas that they need to get into the city centre, using the bus service is their main way in and out of town. Air quality was also raised, and we've agreed that we no longer work in silos, and that's air quality given that we've said by 2030. So it should be the responsibility of every cabinet member, not just the cabinet member with that responsibility. So I am really disappointed that that's not within this report, given that as a council, as a Labour council, we have given this such a priority, and I don't understand why it's not there. You also spoke about CO2 emissions, and obviously, we've been in a pandemic for over a year, complete lockdown, so transport has been very low. When were the CO2 emissions counted from when we were talking about the drop? Because you would imagine that if we reduced cars and increased public transport, our CO2 emissions would naturally decrease. So I was slightly confused as to where this was coming from. And finally, with regards to Amy and the point that Steve was making about how we can divert staff onto other schemes, given how many road schemes that we've got going on at the moment, and being able to work with them was one of our key partners. There are opportunities there for us. We've done this in the past where we've changed our mind on things, gone to our key partners and said, help us out, and they've stepped up. And finally, Chair, this should be about how we make the best that we possibly can. And getting this as best as we can right now will be cheaper than trying to fix it once we identify that actually it is the most beautiful scheme. But as Lena said, it just doesn't work for the people of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'll just comment on the point around air quality not being in this report. I think it does make reference in terms of what the scheme and the connectivity scheme as a whole contributes to improving air quality, and that's one of the key outcomes that it's looking to achieve. But I must state that there is a cabinet report that can be accessed online, and there's further reports that basically make reference to air quality for this actual scheme. So if you're disappointed that it doesn't make enough reference in this report for this evening, this is because this is the third meeting that we're having to discuss this one scheme, and it is a TRO as well. So it's not asking for approval for the whole scheme, it's asking for a conversation, discussion, and then obviously to consider the proposal for the TRO. Can I just bring Fernando in on the CO emissions as well? Comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, the surveys were completed as part of the business case work. So that was at the early stages of the scheme. So we talk about 2016, 17 and the like. So at some point, we expect that traffic will come back to similar levels or potentially similar levels. So the model was done based on the traffic network, how it will work potentially after COVID, really, because we expect the levels going back to the same point. And in terms of the costs, again, yeah, we could work with NMC, and it's actually not Amy, the contractor on this one. Amy is the consultancy that is supporting us on the design side of things, but the contractor on sign is North Midlands Construction, not Amy. And as I said before, the cost that will attract this is about the fences that we have to maintain inside and the staff that you have to keep on site to maintain that safe. So those costs won't go away, really. We will have to cover those costs. Again, don't think it's going to be as high as 58. That's the worst case scenario, but we will do our best to mitigate that and work with our partners as we always do. But there's still going to be some costs coming back to the council if we were to pause the scheme and do some redesign at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jill.
Sorry, just if forgive me, Sharon, if I could just come back in on the point that Fernando's just made about the costs, and there is an issue about the cost, and it is such a shame that this is exactly the fourth meeting that we've come to, where there are 12 Labour councillors here who are raising concerns about this scheme and trying to tell you that we have concerns about this, and it is a shame that it's come to this point rather than it being allowed to have been resolved much earlier on. But trying to fix it once we've completed this will add even more costs. There is an opportunity for us to make a better scheme now than to try and fix it later on down the line. Fernando's point is from an officer, and we're saying as elected representatives, we're raising with you genuine concerns that we've got, and we're asking for an opportunity to make this better. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just come in on that comment because I did make reference to it at the beginning around, obviously, you know, this is around the TRO for Lime Street, but the consultation for the scheme started in 2016, and there's been a range of consultation events and online, and members have had ample opportunity to feedback, scrutinise, comment at stakeholder events, briefing sessions, select committees and cabinet meetings. So yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate that we're having this conversation now, but there's, in my opinion, been opportunity for members to feed in previously too. Thank you. Jill, can I just ask, please, if there's anyone else who hasn't spoke?
Open, take hands down, please.
Sorry, I just raised my hand again. That's why mine was up.
Yours back up.
Jill, is there anyone who hasn't spoke with a hand up?
No, only Hessie's got a hand up.
And unfortunately, due to timing, I'm not going to give anyone the opportunity who has already spoke to come back to speak. Obviously, you know, we take on board everyone's comments and gave the opportunity for people to express their opinions and ask questions over the TRO. So,
Sharon, just on the point you just raised, not on another point.
Yeah, no, Hetty, it's fine. In terms of what I'm trying to achieve is to give the opportunity for everyone to express their comments and also to ask questions. And I believe we've achieved that this evening at the committee. So at this stage, we are going to break for a small pause just to...
Excuse me, Chair, just before you do that, it's Patrick Hurley here. I haven't spoken yet. Could I just make a comment, please?
Yes, of course, Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've listened intently to the debate and the proceedings tonight. I'd like to reiterate the vast majority of comments here that this is a fantastic scheme, but it could be even better. There's been a lot of discussion over many months and many years, and a lot of objections that have been raised both formally and informally throughout council processes and throughout council procedures, to such an extent that this is the third iteration of this meeting going back 4 months. So I understand that a decision has to be taken, and a decision has to be taken, I would suggest, pretty quickly. But the objections and the considerations that are being put forward by Labour councillors and by comrades and colleagues from across the city, they should be taken on board. The last thing I want to see is that we push full steam ahead with a great scheme that looks brilliant but is faulty and that will come back to bite us in years to come. If it's going to cost us £60,000, £80,000 right now, that's regrettable. But much better that than it cost us £800,000 or 1.4 million in 4 years' time to do the rectification work that we should be doing right now. Anyway, appreciate you letting me speak here, Sharon. So thank you very much, and I hope you come to the right decision.
Thank you, Patrick. And just obviously to comment on your comments, it's been a long meeting already, is just to say that, of course, all the objections, the whole point of this meeting is to listen to objections and consider options as well. So, and I believe we've done this because, as you rightly say, this is the third meeting we have held to discuss the TRO. So, as mentioned, we are going to pause for a short period just to obviously discuss the comments and the recommendations that have been put forward. I would like to thank everybody for their contributions this evening. Again, I think, you know, obviously listening to people, it's really important that us as a city council, we get this right. So can I just thank everyone, and we will be with you hopefully in a couple of minutes. Jill, can I just ask that you arrange for the live stream to be paused, and also if you can arrange for myself, Councillor Kushner, Councillor Hinnigan, and to be put into a room.
If I could ask everyone else to leave the meeting and wait back in the lobby again, please. And when the committee are ready, I'll let everyone back into the meeting. Thank you. I'm just going to pause the live stream as well.
committee. Also, if you can arrange for my...
If I could ask everyone else to leave the meeting and wait back in the lobby again, please. And when the committee are ready, I'll let everyone back into the meeting. Thank you. I'm just going to pause the live stream as well.
again, I don't think it's everyone who was at the who's been in the meeting during the duration, but everyone who's in the lobby is back in, and it's live. The live stream's up and running now.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Apologies, we had to take some legal advice, but I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everyone again for their contributions and during the discussion before we reached a decision. It's important that whilst obviously the decision has been delayed, it's important that we do consider all comments and objections within this committee. I just want to make some comments around public transport and integration. I'm confident that the government's latest bus back better strategy, which was published in March 2021, and the combined authorities' green corridor routes commitment and bus re-regulation proposals will bring future benefits and much needed requirements for the bus transport across our city and across the Merseyside region. So in terms of what the Lime Street scheme TRO represents is around, when we talk around what our city centre will look like for the future, it is around prioritising pedestrians, prioritising active travel, and of course prioritising public transport. And I'm confident that this scheme will benefit future, once completed, will benefit the residents of our city, not just now, but in the future. So on that, I agree, we as the committee agree to approve the recommendation set out in the TRO, but also request the report is presented to the Cabinet Member for Highways to detail recommendations for bus stop provision to be outside Central Station and the North and Western, and also a review of taxi rank provision within the city centre. And we ask that the introduction of the shuttle bus, which would be the connection between around the city centre, a report on that to commence as soon as possible. So thank you everyone for your time, and that's the decision of this committee.
Approved, Chair.
Yeah, I approve of them.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Chair.